Friends, it's good to see you again. We have a fascinating show for you today. Anyone who knows me knows that I enjoy learning about the Indo-Pacific. I can talk about it all day long. Well, our guest today from Tokyo, Japan, knows an awful lot about the latest developments in the region, and I've been a fan of her work for years. I'm referring to renowned Japan security policy scholar, Dr. Akiko Fukushima. Dr. Akiko Fukushima served on former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's advisory panel on national security and defense capabilities. She is also research fellow at the Asia International Center and a senior fellow at the Tokyo Foundation. Dr. Fukushima earned her master's degree in international economy and international relations from Johns Hopkins University and a PhD in international public policy from Osaka University. She has previously held roles as Director of Policy Studies at the National Institute for Research Advancement and as Senior Fellow at the Japan Foundation. Dr. Fukushima is also a member of the International Advisory Board of the EU Asia Center in Brussels and is co-editor of Global Governance magazine. She is the author of a number of books, including Japanese Foreign Policy, The Emerging Logic of Multilateralism, as well as Kyosei Tomo ni Ikiru, which is roughly translated as meaning living together. She writes frequently as well on Indo-Pacific security issues. I am pleased to have Dr. Fukushima here with us today. Dr. Fukushima, greetings from California. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day, and a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Ted, and greetings from Tokyo.
Well, to start, a few months back, on April 16, US President Joe Biden hosted Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga at the White House. Mr. Suga was the first foreign leader who Mr. Biden met in person, which some say was a sign of the value that the US places on the US-Japan Alliance. What are some of the key takeaways from that April 16 Biden-Suga summit in Washington?
I trust the summit reflects the current geopolitical situations and the interests of the United States and Japan in the region. In response to your specific question, in the interest of time, I would like to give 3 takeaways from my personal perspective. The first key takeaway from the April Suga-Biden summit in person, in my view, was that the 2 leaders confirmed the importance of the robust U.S.-Japan Alliance and agreed to implement their policies on the free and open Indo-Pacific vision. Here, I would like to call your attention to the fact that U.S.-Japan Alliance has its role both on Japan's national security as well as providing regional and global public goods for peace and stability and prosperity. The second key takeaway, in my view, was the personal relationship or bond forged through the summit meeting. During the summit, President Biden and Prime Minister Suga had tete-a-tete for 150 minutes beyond the scheduled time over hamburger, which I'm told they didn't have a chance to have a bite as they were so much engaged in conversation. I trust they had a chance to know each other better through their face-to-face conversation. Prime Minister Suga and President Biden have forged a personal relationship against the backdrop of their similar upbringing and cultivated their mutual trust. The personal relationship, I believe, will serve as an important diplomatic infrastructure for the 2 countries in years to come. I also observed that the tete-a-tete between Vice President Harris and Prime Minister Suga has also forged personal bond between the 2. Online meetings are very useful and very efficient, but in-person meeting can offer more opportunities to know each other better. Ted, I appreciate this opportunity to discuss with you online, but hope we can discuss in person in the future. Finally, the third key takeaway was certainly the announcement of U.S. Japan joint leaders statement entitled U.S. Japan Global Partnership for a New Era, along with two additional documents, namely U.S. Japan Competitive and Resilience Partnership and Japan U.S. Climate Partnership on Decarbonization and Clean Energy. I welcome economic security, such as technology and energy, was covered in the summit meeting. It is very important for the United States and Japan to collaborate on global issues such as climate change, vaccination, new technology, including digital and green. I would like to note that the trust relationships the two leaders forged during the summit has already played out in the G7 summit, which was held this month in the UK.
At the April 16 joint news conference that Mr. Biden and Mr. Suga held, President Biden shared that the US and Japan will invest together in digital competitiveness in areas such as 5G, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, genomics, and semiconductor supply chains. Can you share a bit about what concerns Washington and Tokyo have that led them to work closely together in these fields?
Digital is becoming very important almost day by day, isn't it? And under the COVID-19 pandemic, digital is coming into our daily life more and more, starting from teleworking, tele-education or online teaching, to tele-shopping, and even tele-theater. And digital is playing such an important role in our lives, as well as in our economy and in our security. And I trust both Japan and the United States do not want to be led, but rather lead this digital technology and its fallouts. Japanese Prime Minister Suga has made it a point to promote digital transformation in Japan. He has passed the bill to establish a digital agency in fall this year in the spring sitting of the Diet. And he is trying to push this digital. And in this digital, there are a couple of concerns we have. One is 5G, fifth generation mobile system. And here we have witnessed the vendor lock-in. And this has affected our economic activities, as well as have generated political issues. We should avoid vendor lock-in in future technologies. It is for safety and security, as well as for economic viability. If we allow vendor lock-in in future, it may lead to standard setting and rules setting by a country who has such a vendor in one's territory. Or else we end up having dual standards, which would not be a service to our benefits and interests. Another point is data flow. Mm-hmm. Data is kind of a gasoline many decades ago in our economy. And data flow is very important, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need free flow of data that is necessary for industry, for education, for industrial and other types mode of activities. But there are data which should be protected as well for security reasons, for human rights and privacy. Former Prime Minister Abe took the initiative, DFFT, data free flow with trust at G20 Osaka summit. And this is something we need to look into. And President Biden and Prime Minister Suga have already followed up their agreement in April and launched a new partnership in June. And these would allow us to lead rather than to be led. And lastly, supply chains. We need to take steps, and we are actually taking steps so that we do not suffer from a sudden default in the supply chains or lack of supplies to our key industries. We have seen that in the past couple of years, and we would like to avoid that. Therefore, we need to take action on digital.
During their meeting in April, the subject of Taiwan arose. Both President Biden and Prime Minister Suga, they read a joint statement that referenced Taiwan. And in their joint press conference, Mr. Suga referred to, quote, the importance of peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait between Japan and the United States, unquote. Typically, US and Japanese prime ministers do not issue joint statements on Taiwan. It's a bit unusual. What is the significance of this reference to Taiwan?
I would like to note that the importance of peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait was mentioned earlier this year in 2+2 joint statement in February, I think, this year. And the same expression was again included in the Suga-Biden summit joint statement. As you have pointed out, Ted, the US and Japanese leaders have not issued a joint statement on Taiwan Strait for almost half a century. This time around, it was included in the context of peaceful resolution of the Taiwan Strait. I presume it was because of the growing concern on it, both in the United States and Japan. This concern is also shared by others around the globe. As you may recall, the similar wording was included for the first time in the G7 summit statement, as well as in the NATO summit held this month. This series of references to peace and stability of Taiwan Strait reflects growing concerns over the situations across the Taiwan Strait and also reflects earnest wish over a peaceful settlement. I have an impression that China frequently takes actions that prior to diplomatic events to strategically communicate their position. In addition, Chinese Coast Guard ships have entered Japanese waters around the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea on a continuous basis almost every year this year. The data on their intrusion is available on the website of the Japan Coast Guard, which I would like you to visit. The US and Japan, as well as Southeast Asian countries, are concerned with Chinese growing assertive actions in the South and East China Seas. Furthermore, I would like to call your attention to the fact that Taiwan is so close to Japan, as you can see in the map. Do you have an idea? I would like you to look at the map. The westernmost island of Yonaguni is just 70 miles from Taiwan. You would be stunned to find out the geographical distance of the Taiwan Strait to Japan. The peace and stability of the strait is certainly important for Japan. At the same time, I would like to emphasize that Japan makes a point to discuss and cooperate with China for the sake of the stability of the region, for its economy, and for solving global issues. Japan has long balanced its position on its neighbor, forging friendly ties with China, while standing firm on its national security. Prime Minister Suga also emphasized a dialogue with China in his press conference in April at the White House. If I may add, while all of us feel like Jack and Beanstalk in watching China rise over the recent decades, we all want to forge a good and amicable relations with China. We each rely heavily on China on trade, supply chains, and economy as a whole. Moreover, we cannot solve global issues such as climate change alone. We need to work with China to solve the global issues. To tick the balance is very difficult for all of us, but we have to do that.
A question for you about Japan's constitution, if I may. The Constitution of Japan has been known as the pacifist constitution, which is due to the Constitution's Article 9 and its vow to renounce war as the sovereign right of the nation. Dr. Fukushima, how can Japan increase its military and security role in the Indo-Pacific without violating its pacifist constitution? I ask because, as you know, American policymakers have been interested in Japan assuming a greater role in some of these responsibilities.
Great question. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, in his speech to the General Assembly of the United Nations in September 2014, said, Japan has been, is now, and will continue to be a force providing momentum for peace. Japan has expressed its commitment to be a peace enabler. Prime Minister Suga also takes this position. In December 2013, Japan's national security strategy, which I participated in drafting, launched Japanese policy to promote proactive contribution to peace based on international cooperation. This has been implemented by Japan. How? I would like you to recall that former Prime Minister Abe and his cabinet reinterpreted Article 9 that you have just quoted on July 1st, 2014, that would allow Japan to engage in collective self-defense. This allows Japan to come to the aid of allied forces if they come under attack. However, this reinterpretation has clear limits. In announcing the cabinet's decision, Prime Minister Abe stressed that it did not depart from the existing principle of not, as a general rule, permitting overseas deployment of the self-defense forces. Japan would engage in collective self-defense only for the purpose of ensuring Japan's survival and protecting its people, only to the minimum extent necessary, and only in circumstances when there is no other appropriate means available. In following up the reinterpretation of Japanese constitution on collective self-defense, Japan introduced the peace and security legislation in 2015, effective in 2016, which allows new opportunities for Japanese engagement in security measures as Tokyo seeks to demonstrate greater flexibility for Japan self-defense forces deployments. The peace and security legislation expanded the SDF's authorities related to logistics support. This will be provided under acquisitions and cross-serving agreements, AXA, with the United States, now with Australia and the United Kingdom as well. Prime Minister Suga, upon his return to Japan after his summit meeting with President Biden, he has instructed Defense Minister Kishi and Ministry of Defense to work on concrete steps to enhance our cooperation further with the United States, which I presume will lead to a revision of Japan-US defense guidelines. In essence, Japan continues to contribute to peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific as well as the whole globe as a responsible member of the global society, as no country can maintain peace alone.
In the remaining time that we have, because I know that you have a commitment in a few minutes, I just wanted to ask one final question. What should American voters and American policymakers know about the U.S. Japan alliance? What are some of those issues that deserve attention by both Tokyo and Washington? And does Washington have any particular blind spots towards Tokyo?
I hope American friends will continue to listen to the views of Tokyo, which might be different occasionally in terms of the vantage points located in vantage points from East Asia, sitting at the front line. When we can coordinate our positions and policies better across the Pacific and form a united front, it would have more weight. There are issues and balances Japan has to weigh in making its political decisions and moves. Even in the digital age, physical location sometimes affects one's own views. Japan sits right next to China, as well as DPRK and Russia. And these three countries are nuclear weapon states. There are slight differences in the temperature of feeding these potential problems in East Asia. And I hope American friends would listen to our views as well. And we should listen to the views of American friends and can forge real good bond and cooperation together.
Dr. Fukushima, I know that we don't have any more time. It's been a real privilege meeting you and getting your views on these subjects, especially after all these years of having followed your good work. I look forward to the next opportunity, hopefully in person, to continue the conversation. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Friends, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Dr. Fukushima as much as I did. What an intelligent and well-studied individual. I look forward to meeting her in person, and I'm eager to read her next writings. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be well, and we'll see you again soon.